Okay.
Okay.
But it is recording. And then,
Uh-huh.
good afternoon, Paul. My name is Claudio, and to your right is Christian from Santiago, Chile. Let's make a formal introduction for our listeners from the studios in Fairfax City. We are very humble and grateful that Paul Vertico accepted our invitation to our show. Paul is an American drummer. He gained recognition as a member of the band Metheny Group from 1983 until 2001, leaving the group to spend more time with his family and pursue other musical interests. Paul is very active in the field of education. He's an associate professor of jazz studies at the Roosevelt University of Chicago, seven-time Grammy Award winner, the man, the myth, the legend. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Claudio. Hi, Christian. Nice to see you both.
Hi.
And yeah, so Paul, this has been, as you know, politics are now involved. This has been a very weird year for everybody. How things are going with you, your wife, your family, your creativity? How this pandemic has affected, your world, if you will?
Well, I mean, we're very fortunate because so many people have lost work and can't pay their rent and so many things. I mean, I've lost many gigs. I have three records that just came out in Italy. I was supposed to go there. I was supposed to, there's so much stuff that I lost, not only locally, but internationally. But luckily, I'm a tenured associate professor at Roosevelt University. So I'm able to teach all my classes like this via Zoom. Yeah. And that's been fantastic. And I like technology. So, I made sure I got a good microphone. I'm using a Shure, MV88 Plus, which is like recording quality. And it seems like the students are fine with it, and the difference between teaching live and teaching via Zoom, I mean, obviously you're not seeing them in real time, but at the same time, I like to compare it almost like a live gig versus a recording session, where a live gig, you just play and whatever happens, where a recording session, everything is documented. So it really makes you focus on when you teach that they put that up on Blackboard and students can watch it later, so you want to make sure that everything is organized and very efficient. And then my wife has been lucky enough to teach, via remote as well. And then my daughter also has her job and she's able to work remotely. So all three of us, even though it's very weird, I mean, the world has been so strange and, so much stuff is like uncertain. We've been very lucky in the fact that we're able to do things. And even though I've lost live gigs and turned down some live things too, because, at my age and stuff, I don't really want to play and take the chance on getting sick or bringing home something. But I've been able to do a lot of recording sessions, and that's been good too. The song we were just talking about, my wife's song, Love Can Conquer Hate, that was done all basically kind of remotely. And it's, in a way, it's kind of the future because, people, if we're thinking about global warming and all that, people aren't going to be able to travel the same way and pollute, have a large carbon footprint, as they say. So I think as things get better and with technology where the latency, isn't like where you can't play in time together, that's starting to get solved. And so I'm positive. I always stay positive. It's like, that's just the way I look at it, not naively positive, but just if there's nothing you can complain about if you can't change things. So you make whatever is happening in your real world at the real time, you just look at how you can make it better and accept what's there, try to fix it if you can. But there's certain things that right now, like those technological obstacles, people are working on that. And I think the future looks different, but bright.
Yeah, especially with the new president now. Hopefully, this will.
My God, what can I say?
Man, I love the setting there with the vinyl to your left and to the right, and the 7 Grammy Award. That's beautiful, man. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good, well earned. So let's go back to the beginning. Were you born like in a musical family? How you start?
No.
How it came about?
I have no idea. I mean, You know, my mom used to, you know, she liked Sarah Vaughan. She would sing along Sarah Vaughan songs and we would listen to music, but no one played in my immediate family. And when I was in 6th grade, so when I was 12, my mom and dad and we moved to a new city called Cary, Illinois, in the northwestern suburbs of Chicago. Yeah, you know. And it was funny because my mom said, "Oh, you should take up an instrument," because she knew I loved music. And she says, "Just don't take up the drums." But that was what I was interested in. And I joined the school band and I could just play. I don't know why. I mean, my band director in grade school was a saxophone teacher named Vern Pade, and he was really great. He taught me how to hold the sticks and read music. And I didn't even have a drum set until I was graduating grade school, until I was 14. So I would just play on pillows and just listen to a lot of music, play along with the radio and that. And I remember most of the other students at that time had been playing in the concert band. They had been playing since they were 8, you know, and I'd started 12, which is kind of late. But the first time I sat down at a friend's drum set, I was able to play the drum set right away. I don't know why. And then when I went to high school, so now I had this drum set and I used to practice along with, you know, the radio and just play like, you know, with the Hollies or the Beatles, but play, you know, almost free, but in time. And I asked my mom if I could take drum set lessons. And she goes, "No, just keep doing what you're doing," which was okay. You know, she had some faith in me, which is great. And then my high school band director, because I have a book called Turn the Beat Around, I dedicated that book to him because when I got into high school, he let me just be me. I mean, he would let me improvise on symphonies and say, "Yeah, I like what you're doing more than what's written." And we're friends to this day. And, you know, and that's the reason I think I became a musician. So I was very interested in sports and chemistry, but it just graduated that I got more into music and you know, people started liking what I was doing. And before, you know, I was playing gigs. Yeah, it was just like not a plan, not a thing like if I do this and I do this, then I'll be able to do this. No, I just went with my flow, what I love to do. Luckily, I was surrounded by people that were very supportive and talented. And one thing that led to another. Then I got a scholarship at a university, and you know, it was just very natural. It was so in a way I always like to think about that. That's a lot of things with life is your attitude, and also luck. You know, I mean, if you're in a bad neighborhood and you know you have to fight, you know, horrible things and stuff, that makes it tough. I mean, the neighborhood I grew up in was, you know, middle class, and it was just, I don't know, I just consider myself very fortunate, you know, even getting the Metheny gig. I did not try to get that gig. It wasn't like, oh, if I do this and that, I'll be able to get this gig. It was just, you know, just doing what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll be talking about your you know, your work as a solo artist with your trio and the Metheny. But now that you mentioned Pan Metheny, I believe that yourself and Steve Rodney were in another band.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
I think Pat Metheny saw you guys playing, and then
Well,
have a conversation with you guys after that.
No. I mean, Steve and I had started playing, you know, in the 70s, and we were playing.
The two of you went to the same school, right? Northwestern.
No,
right?
no, not at all.
Okay, well.
No. And I know, I mean, so Steve and I just, you know, as we broke into the Chicago scene, that's how we met. And we started playing with this guitar player, Ross Traut, who was like this really great guitar player and a friend of Pat's. I think they might have even been roommates for, you know, in Miami for a bit. And I was also playing with everyone in Chicago, sort of. So when Pat came right after Watercolors, he came to Chicago and he was doing a tour and the drummer couldn't do it. I don't even know who the drummer was. So this was before the group was really formed. And he called me to do a week of touring with him and I turned him down.
Wow.
Because I was playing with this guy, Joe Daley, a very legendary Chicago sax tenor player. He was also a incredible teacher. He taught, you know, like Dave Sanborn took lessons, John Clemmer, you know, all these people. And I had been playing with him for a couple of years by that time. And we finally got like the biggest gig that we ever had, which was the Jazz Showcase, which is the second oldest club in the United States after the Village Vanguard, the second oldest jazz club. And so I didn't want to, since I was playing with Joe, I wanted to stay loyal to Joe, you know. And that particular group that we played the showcase was Muhal Richard Abrams, you know, one of the founding fathers of the AACM. And I think Steve Laspina was playing bass. So I turned Pat down. And that was, you know, a lot of people think I was crazy, but, you know, I was just being loyal. And I think later Pat actually said that that was a good sign of, of who I was, I guess. And then after that, you know, I went to see Pat play a couple times. I just said hello afterwards. You know, we barely talked. And then one night in what was 1982, I was with this band, the Simon and Bard Group, and Steve and I had done some records for them as well. But I was on tour with them, and Steve was playing with Pat by that time, and they played some concert in Portland the same night I was playing with Simon and Bard Group in Portland in a club. And so afterwards, Steve and Pat came down to hear the band, and you know, so I just said hi, didn't even really talk to them that much. And we played well, played the way we normally played. And then, you know, a couple of weeks later, I got a call that after Nana Vasconcelos left, they were going to audition a percussionist. And so would I come out and play drums for the audition? You know, and I said, sure. So I flew to Boston, and I played for the you know, the percussionist audition. It lasted like a half hour. And then we jammed for like, God, I think we were to get like almost 12 hours. This thing lasted. And at one point it was cold, you know, it was like this warehouse in Boston. And at one point, you know, Pat said, hey, you know, we just want to talk. Can you go out, you know, go out in the lobby or whatever? I said, sure. And I'm freezing. And they talked. And the next thing they know said, well, you know, because I didn't know the music, believe it or not. I didn't really listen, you know, to that. You know, I liked Bright Size Life a lot. Watercolors wasn't my favorite. So Pat says, well, man, I'm going to be coming back to Chicago on New Year's Day. So why don't you learn some of the music and we'll play again? And so Steve Rodby and I got together. Steve kind of taught me some of the music a little bit. And then we jammed, like, you know, it was at some room in some hotel downtown Chicago. And then, you know, it was fun. Yeah, I knew some of the music a little bit by then. And then Pat goes, you know, great. And then a couple of days later, he says, do you have a passport? And I said, no. He said, get one. You're going to Europe with us. And that's how that whole thing happened.
Wow, man.
Crazy, isn't it?
What about that? What about that?
Yeah, totally natural.
Yeah.
You know, I guess, I mean, they must have liked what I did
yeah.
You know, because I know I heard people say that like Lyle really played well with me, and just a couple things that they thought I played, you know, whatever, you know, who knows why people get gigs, why bands, you know, change personnel sometimes for, you know, because sometimes people grow out of the band or the band wants to change directions. Who knows? I mean, even with me, I mean, you know, Imaginary Day was the last record I did with them. And, you know, I got 3 Grammy nominations and won 2 Grammys. And then, you know, by that time I was kind of doing different things too. Pat started wanting to go different directions. And so, you know, I had my daughter, you know, and so it was like, wow, you know, so it was a natural process to move on. And so I'm happy where I went. I think probably Pat's happy where they went, you know, because Antonio's a great drummer, you know, so life, you know, and I've been lucky in my life. Barb and I have been together since like 1976.
Good for you.
You know? Yeah, you know, and like the gig at Roosevelt is going, I'm on 18 years there. And before that, even though I was not full time at Northwestern University, I was there 16 years. Yeah. And so many of my relationships have lasted a long time, which, you know, that's great, because sometimes, you know, people get a gig and they'll do one tour and then whatever, or you'll do one record with someone but never do another record again with them. You know, I've done a lot of records where I've done multiple records with people too. And, you know, again, I don't know why. I mean, you know, I'd like to think I know why, but, you know, it's just, I think if you try to do the right thing in life, hopefully things will happen, you know.
Bingo, absolutely, man. Absolutely. Yeah. You nail it, man. Absolutely, man. You do good things in life, and good karma, if you will, comes around, and then you do well. You have,
you know,
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
You were well recommended by Steve Rodby. I mean, you knew the guy.
I'm sure I was.
So, I mean, there was no
Yeah,
argument
I'm sure
there.
Steve had a lot to do with it because, you know, after I got the gig, then I really got together with Steve before we flew to Europe for the first time. Because I had never been to Europe before because I didn't even have a passport. So, you know, there were no drum charts, so to speak. So, you know, Steve and I would just play down the songs and he would kind of tell me what the sections were or whatever, you know. But Pat wanted me to play like me too. You know, Danny's great. You know, Pat loved Danny too. But Pat, you know, Pat wanted me to sound like me, you know.
Correct.
And so that whatever direction we went in after the original quartet, we went in, you know, went in that direction. And, you know, I played a lot with Mark Egan too, you know, like in the Larry Coryell trio, you know, Mark and I are really good friends. So it's just, you know, it is what it is, as they say, you know.
Good. Yep, good, man. Go ahead, Christian.
Well, sir, you know, it's been 24 years since the last time we met here in Santiago. Yeah, that's when you gave me this, even with an autograph inside. I don't know if you can see that. I was back then. I was in Futuro, the FM station, and I played "Don't Look Back" from this album. I really
written by my wife.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Look at that. Yeah. Well, do you ever look back at those days? I mean, well, you always carry a little bag of memories, don't you, wherever you go, I suppose.
Absolutely. You know, and my wife and I love Chile. You know, I have really fond memories of being there. I'd love to come back, you know. And it was the most fun for me with Pat's band was Secret Story when my wife was in the band, so that we were touring together because, you know, I love being home. I'm very much of a homebody. So when I would be on tour, especially back then, you know, it was very difficult to call people. It was very expensive to stay in touch. Now you can just, you know, you can see each other via Skype or Zoom, or, you know, you can FaceTime. Back then, you know, when you went away, you might talk to each other every few days because it was so expensive. So when Barb was with us, and this is before we had our daughter, I would have stayed on the road forever with that band with her, you know, because it was great sharing all those places and you know, because by that time, you know, when you tour a lot, even if you get to a big city like Paris or whatever, you've seen many things. So a lot of times if you're by yourself, you know, it's like you might want to just sleep, you know, just save your energy. But then when you're with someone you love, all of a sudden that who hasn't been to those places, it's like, yeah, let's go to the Louvre, let's go, you know, to all these different places and sightsee again. So it was so fun. It was great. And, you know, just to play, because when you're on stage, you know, I could look back at her and we could smile. It was fantastic, you know.
I don't know if Claudio allows me to share a screen to show you a picture. Do you?
Yeah.
I just want to show you a very old picture.
Okay.
I'm disabled, so I cannot. Oh, well, never mind.
And
Never mind. Yeah, the house is disabled.
I think, Christian, I think they have to, are you co-host? I think you have to be a host to share this, or co-host. So Claudio, you probably want to make
Christian... share. Yeah, we can share. Yeah, I did.
All right. Yeah, here it is.
Okay.
There you are.
I don't see it actually. Oh, there we are. Oh my God. Wow. That's unbelievable.
Well, that's me in the center. You know, the guy to your left. I mean, that looks like you.
That looks like me. At least it used to.
Hey, you did have a lot more hair than back then.
Yeah, well, I just shaved my head. I mean, I didn't shave it. You know, when this COVID thing started, we were in the backyard of my home, and my wife and my daughter Talia and her boyfriend Avi were there. We were just having dinner, and you know, I've had a ponytail forever, and I just said, shave my head and film it. So they did. You know, I had never shaved my head before, and even growing a beard right now, you know, I've had a goatee for a while, just, you know, to look like a professor kind of, but now I'm just growing a full beard because, you know, winter time is coming. Sure. And you know, it's I like changing my look. I really do. I think it's I don't want to get stuck looking the same way all the time, you know.
Absolutely. Yep.
I just wanted to say, Paul, well, so good to talk to you again after such a long time. I was going to mention that the first time you came here back in 1980, 89, was it? 86? We were talking about that with Claudio. I saw the band on the bus parking at the front of the National Stadium entrance, because you played in a tennis court back then.
I know.
It was December the 21st, a few days before Christmas. Yeah. And I remember I saw you like, what is this? Where are we going to? It was the first time the band was here. Then you came back in 93. Then in 96, that's when we had the chance to have dinner. We went for dinner together with the promoter. And you showed me the pictures of your daughter, I guess. I remember that. So I know you have good memories of places like this. And we also wish that you could come back someday after all this pandemic thing is over. So do you have any special memories of any of those occasions where you came to Chile?
Well, I mean, kind of many, actually, you know. I remember the gigs, especially, you know, later on when we played outside, it was really cold. You know, the one in the tennis court, I just remember that because of the Pinochet horrible stuff that happened there. So we were very aware of what grounds we were on, you know. It was like red clay tennis court kind of thing. I remember playing there. But I remember the ones that were sort of like maybe an hour outside of Santiago. Those were great. And you know, people are in their winter coats, and we were almost in our coats playing, but the audience was always fantastic. And then, you know, it sounds funny to say, but you know, the Chilean wine and the food and just everything. You know, I came back to Chile as, you know, to do drum clinics. I think I did 1 or 2 gigs with Larry Coryell there. I don't know if you know that, but I've been there a number of times outside of Pat Metheny.
No, I wasn't aware of that.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
I remember some workshop, but not the Larry Coryell thing you mentioned really now.
Yeah.
What was that?
That would have been, let's see, that would have been with Mark Egan. So that probably would have been sometimes in the early 2000s, I think, you know. Yeah.
Well, there was a time when you came here, the last time you came in 96 with the Pat Metheny Group, there were not so many concerts here. It was like a big thing when somebody came. But then in the last 20 years or so, many shows began, you know, taking place, people coming here. So it's not very difficult that you miss one of those occasions. You cannot be there in every single show. Now, I was going to ask you, Paul, how much space could you gain for your own ideas after the Pat Metheny Group era? Like how it all developed after this album?
Well, I mean, okay. I mean, this sounds weird to say, but you know, the Paul Vertico in the Pat Metheny Group is only a small part of Paul Vertico. You know, I was playing what I thought, and I guess Pat thought, made the music successful. Okay. Because I mean, I teach my students that's our job, basically, is to serve the music and make the music successful. But, you know, I didn't have a lot of solos. You know, most of the music was with sequencers, you know, everything was, so there was improvisation, but not mega improvisation. Like, because, you know, I come from bands that are 100% improvised, like, you know, Earwax Control and my band, Vertico, Cane and Gray. We have 7 records out. And everything's 100% improvised. You know, I have duo records. There's a great duo record, a really great sax player named Frank Catalano. And I'm just about to release a duo CD with Larry Gray, who's part of Vertico Cane Gray. He's a great bassist, cellist, guitar player. So in many ways, people really don't know who I am. They only think that I play cymbals. You know, it's like I'm not that. I mean, I am that when I'm doing that. And that's what you do. You know, to keep a job is like you have to fulfill what the music needs of you to do, you know. But in many ways, you know, sometimes it's difficult because even the in and the out, all those records like that, you know, they might have sold a couple thousand copies, you know. So like when you're in a band like that's selling 1 million copies, like Metheny's band, more people are going to know you for that. That's just the way it is. It's just like an actor. Like if you're an actor and, you know, you're in a movie that's a hit movie and, you know, say it's a comedy and everyone thinks, oh, this guy's really funny. Then they don't know that you could be a serious actor and do many other things outside of that because maybe those other movies weren't successful, or everyone still thinks of you as a comedian. So to me, that's been one of the, it's not frustrating, because in any business, especially the music business, it's fantastic to be known for anything, because there's millions of wonderful players that never get any recognition. So I'm proud of what I did with Pat. I think those records are historic records that, can't ever be taken away. But it's really funny, because a lot of people, when they hear me play jazz, in fact, when I got on the cover of Modern Drummer in, 1995, the year my daughter was born, Bill Mokowski, who wrote the article, came to the Chicago Jazz Festival, and he heard me playing like straight ahead. And he goes, "Man, I didn't know you played like that." And I'm like, "Yeah, I've been playing like that my whole life." When people hear me in rock bands, they go, "Wow, we didn't know you played like that." So I feel very fortunate to have it's a musical reputation. So that's great. But I do feel sometimes people don't really know. And one time when I did a clinic in Chile, actually, one of the guys came up to me afterwards in the audience and says, "I was going to ask you to try to demonstrate playing all the 26 drum rudiments, because I didn't think you could. But after he heard me play, then he goes, obviously you can." So a lot of people have no idea that I could play a roll with one foot, that I can, play. I mean, it's very crazy. Again, I'm lucky to be known for anything, and probably I wonder if I'd be doing this interview if I wasn't with Pat. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times you're famous for something, but then you're also typecast. And that's what happened. And a lot of times after the shows, Pat and I would go and jam with local musicians and play, standards and play that. And people were like, "Wow, we didn't know you could solo." It's like, of course I can solo, I mean, there's stuff that's never been released. There's a great trio thing with Ross Traut and Jaco Pastorius in the studio one time. It's from 1977. And I haven't released it because, and I'm so proud of it. I was like 23 years old. I was 23 years old at the time. And I'm really proud of that. But unless it gets released, no one's ever going to hear it,
Do you have the masters, the tapes?
Oh, well, I do. But on that one, Ross Traut was the one, because he knew Jaco from Miami. So I felt like, I don't know if I need to get permission. But I mean, I just, this COVID thing has made me, not only practice more, but I've had more time to listen, read, but I've also been going through all these old recordings that I have. I have this great weekend with my quintet with Lyle Mays playing at the Green Mill. And we're playing all originals and straight ahead, like, stuff like, from the Blue Note catalog. And Lyle sounds amazing on it. So I'm wondering if I should start releasing some of these things, because before I die, I want people to know that I'm not just the happy cymbal player,
Right. Yeah, you sure should. You sure should. Now, I was going to ask you precisely, Paul, did you ever feel that your individual creativity or flow could not really happen after all you said, it might become like obvious, but maybe you would have to spend time already passed. Like you didn't really have the chance to show yourself. That's what you say, yeah?
Yeah, but I showed myself working for what the music needed,
Exactly.
So in other words, it wasn't about me when I was in the band, because some groups, especially if you're playing like the totally improvised stuff, everyone's 100%, in the communication. With this, it was Pat and Lyle's compositions. It's more featured, like I had like maybe one solo and maybe then a duo with, the percussionist. But, Pat would have like 23 solos that night, and Lyle might have, 9 solos. And Steve Rodby would have 1, So it wasn't about that, though, because people didn't come to hear us just solo. They came to hear what was recorded, those great compositions, the great arrangements, the great production. And so I never felt like frustrated, because that was my job. I was happy. And at the same time, I was very fortunate because, we were one of the top jazz groups in the world at that time. So, we're flying first class, staying in, great hotels, having thousands of people come, because you know, and I don't feel like I sold out because I did like the music, and I liked it. I was proud to be on stage with those great musicians playing that great music. But, you know, even historically, like I teach a jazz, you know, bunch of historic jazz classes at the university, but sometimes the books I'll use, you know, on jazz, I won't mention any of them, but whenever they mention Pat Metheny, they never mention me or Rodby. They never mention that particular period, but if they do, it's almost like, well, that was the light kind of commercial, light jazz, you know, faux Brazilian music, you know, which really makes me angry. Because I mean, they, you know, we're playing stuff in 22/8 and 7/8. We're playing all this complex music, but the music sounded like you could just whistle it in your shower, you know, because we played it so effortlessly, you know, and so I feel like that period of time when I was in the group is kind of misunderstood for really how complicated that music was, and to actually make it sound like that, you know. So I don't know, you know, I haven't followed everything since I left the group. I've heard certain things, you know, with Pat's band, and I think now they might be jamming more or something like that. But when I was in the band, we were going through that sort of Brazilian kind of period in a lot of ways. And we did use sequencers on pretty much everything except maybe 3 or 4 songs, meaning that like that you had to stay with the sequencer. You know, you can't just go off and add an extra chorus or whatever. Everything had to be, it was almost like a big band, you know, and even Lyle said it was almost like a big band, that we had these arrangements that we had to stick to. And if you look at the history of big band music, like swing music, there were fantastic musicians, but they would maybe just get 1 or 2 choruses on songs. When bebop came out, all of a sudden it was more about soloing, you know what I mean? And jazz got less popular when that happened too. You know, the swing era is when everyone was dancing and it was like the rock and roll of its time. So, you know, now I don't really care about any of that. I'm just going to play whatever I want to play. You know, I feel like I know what I'm doing, and in the time I have left on the planet, luckily I'm healthy, but you know, everything has changed. And you know, a lot of young people, you show the CD, no one's got CDs anymore, young people, you know, which is crazy. So, you know, the whole market has changed. Many things, you know, a lot of times when you mention Pat Metheny, a lot of young musicians, even, they kind of know the name, but they don't really, they're looking at the newer people, right? You know, everyone's into Snarky Puppy and bands like that. So life goes on, as they say.
Now, you just mentioned, Paul, and I've been talking about this with some people are really into the Pat Metheny Group, but the ECM era. So something happened there, because some people really do not, it's not that they don't like it, but they feel a distance with this Brazilian period you call so well. And what happened there? Because that was Geffen records. So obviously there was a difference. There were fantastic pieces like The Last Train Home, which I really, really, really almost cry to all the time. So what happened there? Could you share with us some ideas?
I don't know. You know, I was on the last ECM record with Pat, which was First Circle. And that was still the quartet. There wasn't a lot of sequencers at that time. I think Pat got the synclavier, you know, and then he started orchestrating everything, you know, and then we had to play with those orchestrations. So when we played with that, you know, I know he was really into Milton Nascimento, Clube de Esquino too. I remember that was a big record that he loved. So we kind of ended up going into that sort of Brazilian mode, you know. Why? I don't know. I mean, that was sort of Pat's decision, because it was, you know, it's the Pat Metheny Group. And then, you know, but with all the sequencers, that's what I'm saying. There's less freedom. There's even less space sonically. You know what I mean? So that's why I'm playing a lot of cymbals. There's not a lot of room to do a lot of stuff, because you have all this percussion going on. You have all these synth things going on. You have, like, you know, even extra, you know, guitar tracks and everything. So when people heard us live, you know, they'd see 5 or maybe 6 or 7 people on stage, but we sounded like 20 people. Well, it was 20 people, only, except maybe 12 of them weren't there. They were recorded, you know, where the ECM period was 4 people or 5 people playing just that.
Okay.
You know, yeah, because, you know, are you going with me? That's with the sequencer, you know, because you have dun, 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 and we have to play with that. So I think Pat got comfortable with trying to have like these extra sounds going that we would augment on top of this set piece of music. And that's just where it went. And that's fine. I mean, it was kind of fun in some ways because, you know, the tempos were always the tempo, you know, because when you play live with people, sometimes, you know, people go, oh, it's too fast, it's too slow, because they might be in a different, you know, they might be nervous or they're drunk or whatever. But like when you have a sequencer, you can just say, hey, don't look at me, man. That's the sequencer. That's right going to be on that tempo no matter what. And if it feels weird to you, that's just because you feel different that time.
And how do you account for people going crazy about that particular piece, which I obviously love? Are you going with me since the very beginning of the story, even till now? If he comes to wherever he plays, or you, maybe if he could play it, people would recognize it. It became like a hit song. What makes it so different? Well, it's fantastic, of course.
Well, I mean, it's kind of funny because, you know, it's got a nice kind of groove to it, and you know, there's the hook, you know, and even that little vamp that I just kind of sang, you know, that's, people can feel that, and that just, you know, it's like that, it's like they can relate to that even if they don't know what it is. And then the song builds, it's like a long sexual thing, you know what I mean? It kind of goes and finally it climaxes, you know? Yeah. So it's that kind of piece too, where it builds slowly, and, you know, and, you know, Pat plays great on it too. So, you know, I think there's a combination of both those things. I know some people that hate that Roland guitar sound. Some people, they can't stand that, you know? So some people like stuff, some people hate it. I always tell my students this. I say, just be true to yourself, because people are going to love you for the very reason that other people hate you. It's just the way it is, you know? So if you're not happy with what you're doing and you're trying to make people happy, you're going to lose yourself. And we're all unique. We're all different people on this planet at this particular time. So we really owe it to ourselves and everyone else to be the truest form of who we can be.
Okay, thank you.
So I know, but Paul, that you are a fan of improvisation, and you have released several albums improvising with other artists. And in terms of, if you put that in terms of, you know, psychological terms, right?
Yeah.
Improvisation in many ways, if you will, is like living in the present, right? So I'm myself, right? If you have asked me the question, right? As I get older, right, I try to live more in the present. But up to, I don't know, 5 years ago, I was never in the present, either past or future. You know, what I can do better about the stuff that I have done, and what can I do, you know, a year from now, being in school, being career, with my son, with my wife, more gigs, music, whatever. I wasn't living in the present. And so here's the question. So improvisation in many ways is like living in the present, right? You are jamming with a guy, you don't have a music sheet you want to play. The guy start, and you know the piano, and you go the drum and the sax and the bass, and you guys look one another, and no shit. You can be blindfolded, if you will, and then it sounds very good. How difficult is improvisation?
It's easy. It's easy with good musicians, because like with Wertico, Kane and Gray again, you know, we don't talk about anything when we play. I mean, we don't say we're going to play in 5/4. We're going to play in the key of G flat. No, nothing. We just play. And it all sounds like compositions, because all three of us are, hopefully we're all great musicians. That, you know, it sounds weird to say, but yeah, we know what we're doing, and we like each other, and we have a conversation, and every conversation is different. And every time we play, you know, say like each record might be recorded, you know, 1 or, you know, 6 months from the last record, and 6 months before the next one. In that 6 months, all three of us have grown, you know, so we bring new things to the table all the time, which is interesting, because if you're stuck and you only play the same thing. So the way I even teach drums, you know, if I give a book, say a drum book that everyone else uses, and then my students just play the book the way everyone does, just go from exercise, okay, fine. They're going to sound different a little bit, but they're going to sound like everyone else because everyone else has worked on that. But I'll take one exercise and I'll have them try to come up with how many ways can you take this? 20 ways, and then that makes them come up with their version of it as opposed to what I would have done or what some other drummer would have done. So that's the other thing about this is that we try to be unique, so as a professional musician, to work, we have to serve the music because that's the only way you get hired is to make other people feel comfortable. So if you're playing a wedding, you want to get the dance floor packed. If you're playing a bebop gig, you want to swing and you want to support the soloists and make every song, successful in that particular style. And then when you're playing improvised, you can just do whatever you want to do. And the more, like Larry Gray, for instance, he's a virtuoso on like piano, drums, bass, guitar, everything. Dave Kane isn't really like a jazz player, which I love and Larry loves too. So he's not just trying to play Charlie Parker licks. He's got a great sound. He's a great musician. He was into computers too. He did a lot of stuff for Apple. So he's a great filmmaker, and so he brings this other element. So we're not just trying to sound like an ESP record from the 60s. And we're not just trying to sound like some avant-garde thing, which I love, but we're not trying to play like that. And so I think that, it's who you associate with that brings out different parts of you, and then you bring out different parts of them, and certain combinations are just really great. And those are the ones that just last a long time. Other ones you might play for a while and okay, that was good, but you only have so much time in the day, so you want to be with people that really you want to be with, and that's how that works. It's really easy. You just trust yourself, and you trust them and you listen. You don't bring in something like, oh, I practiced this today, so I'm going to play this. No, because then you're not in the present. So when you're in the present, like this conversation, you guys are listening to me, I'm listening to you, and it's a different conversation than I would have had with two other people, if that makes sense.
No, it does. Yeah. No, absolutely. Very, very good answer. Now, another sort of psychological question. When you are behind whether it's with Band Metheny or yourself or your buddies, whatever that is, behind the drummers, you're not, I imagine that you don't think just about beats, right? Or symbols. No. As if, if you go to the Louvre, like when you were in Paris, right? You contemplating a painting, right? Do you think about, I know you need to do this, but do you think about the whole thing, like colors and textures and lights and so on and so forth?
Sure. Every song has a mood,
right?
Whether it's a rap song, whether it's a fusion song, whether it's a bebop song, it has a mood. And so if you're aware of the music, the type of music you have, if it's a style of music, then you're aware of how to make that particular style of music succeed. If you're really experimental, then you might take something and put it into something different. So in other words, like I love to cook. So say, if you have Mexican cuisine, okay, so if you only use what the Mexican cuisine uses, you probably be a good Mexican cook. But if you bring in some Japanese elements, or you bring in some, Spanish elements, or some, whatever, different elements, French cooking elements, all of a sudden you can get these new combinations. You come up with these nouveau cuisines that are different. And it's the same thing with music. And I've always done that because the band Earwax Control, which was the band when I was out of college, I was in that band. We was totally improvised, but we were really funny too. We would put television sets in front of us that we couldn't see and play crazy sounds. And then people would start laughing, and we'd look at the television and it might be Elvis Presley singing, but we're going, we would do a lot of really things that no one would do. Like some musicians would come to hear us just to watch, like, what are these guys going to do now? And even before digital, I took a cassette one time and I recorded Bela Lugosi, Dracula, Lawrence Welk, the band leader, the Champagne band leader. And I cut them up so that they were actually introducing Earwax Control. When I played that on tape before we would, to introduce us, I was always into really experimental things. And most people don't know any of that stuff because, how many Earwax Control records have we sold?
Right, that's right.
It's that. So that's, to me, that's a little sad. Not because of just the recognition, but it's sad because there's some really great music. Well, even my trio with John Mulder, that guitar player, John Mulder.
Yeah.
You probably heard us, right, Claudio? You ever hear that?
I mean, I have 4 CDs from you, from your trio, different type of trios.
Yeah.
Last night I was preparing for the interview. I saw some gigs that you did when you were in Europe with I think it was a Polish band or.
Oh yeah, SBB. I was with that band 7 years.
Very, very different. I mean, if I were to take a look of all your 20 CDs or so, right? And
yeah,
you are alone more than Metheny, just playing.
I'm on hundreds of records, man.
Right.
I'm on all kind of records. Yeah, and I never feel like it's not me. It's just that part of me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah. And
so a similar question to that, right? So now that you have had more time in your hands, now they are home, more time in your hands, do you watch your old recordings and try to analyze yourself?
No, not really. I mean, like when I'm home now, I mean, a lot of times, because I teach, so I'm looking at a lot of documentaries, I'm reading a lot of books. And I'll listen to some music sometimes just for inspiration. I'll just put on like a favorite record that makes me, and I'll hear it with new ears because maybe the last time I heard it might be 10 years ago. So now I've grown and I have a different perspective. But to get back to what I was going to say, because I want to finish this, like John Mulder is a great guitar player. We just did another record, but I've done like 7 or 8 records with him. And he's this incredible, great writer. He's an amazing writer, amazing guitar player, one of the best guitar players in the world, as far as I'm concerned, so melodic, but a lot of people don't know him because he's based out of Chicago and he was a Catholic priest for a long time. Wow. So, yeah. So that was, so he chose that path. But to me, I guess to get back to what we're talking about, I'll listen to a lot of the stuff now that hasn't been released. I just found a fantastic trio record with me and John Mulder and this Brian Peters, this brilliant, he's like a genius, just like Lyle was. Maybe not as much all just music, but he's like a computer genius, just a genius, a young kid. And we did this great gig at this club Martyrs in Chicago. So I want to release that because the stuff is amazing, and it's just a matter like, how do you release it now? If you put CDs out, who's going to buy the CDs? If you just give it away, I guess we could just give it away, but that's kind of sad too, because then people don't appreciate stuff as much when it's free. So, the whole Spotify thing has really changed the industry so much because, Spotify sounds, I guess, okay, but a CD on a good stereo, when you're mastering a record, you're mastering it to sound amazing. And then, people listen to a little MP3 with little white headphones, and they don't hear anything. And it's so much of the artistry beyond just the music, but all the details of the music and the recording has gotten lost, which is really so sad. And now they're giving it away. So that even hurts it even more, so then people don't appreciate it. Absolutely. It's a strange situation, but it is what it is right now. Hopefully, I think when the COVID pandemic is done, I think people will want to hear music live again. Hopefully, hopefully the clubs will be able to maintain and stay open because there's, a lot of clubs and restaurants are closing because they have rent. If there's no one, if no one's coming in, they have to close. So it's going to be real interesting to see what happens.
Absolutely, yeah. No, okay. Go ahead, Christian. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Now that you were mentioning it, Paul, the Spotify, I in fact had one question about that. Spotify, Tidal, whatever you mentioned. As you say, young people haven't had the experience of gathering together, when I was younger, I would gather with a couple of friends and have the stereo with the powerful speakers and let yourself, go to other worlds. Now, maybe you could consider, if you're planning or you want to release some interesting material, some people are getting these high resolution files as well, which is the other alternative. CDs use too much space in your home, don't they? But high resolution files are being quite many famous records have come out in high resolution files digitally.
I guess, yeah. The only trouble with that, and this is I even find myself with this, when you used to have a record, an LP or a CD, but especially a record, you put it on, you have to take care of it. And you usually listen to the whole thing and then you turn it over. When you have like everything in a hard drive, you listen to a little bit and then, oh yeah, let me hear something else. People want to keep moving faster and faster. So to listen to, a record, to listen to a 15-minute solo of a saxophone player, on a jazz tune, because jazz tunes used to be, all the things you are all, the standards used to be Broadway songs, songs from movies and stuff. A lot of kids don't know those standards anymore too. So they're not even standards, they were old standards. So there's new standards now. So everything is completely changed. And so when you have a 4 terabyte drive of, every album that you've ever had, there's that real kind of, what would you call it? There's that temptation to listen to something and then move on, as opposed to like what you're talking about. Yeah, because when, we had LPs, I specifically remember like in high school, we'd gather and someone would have a new record. And who's this? Oh, it's a band called Santana. Oh, let's put them on. And we'd all listen. What's this? This is a new record by, Black Sabbath. Oh, Jimi Hendrix. Or you put out a new record. Oh, this is Coltrane's new record, or this is Ornette's new record. And everyone would sit there and play it and talk about it. A lot of people don't even have time to do that anymore, because now everyone's running around texting, listen, your phone. One thing I refused to do when I was a studio player in Chicago was to get a beeper. The beeper would be like, all of a sudden someone would, okay, then you check and call your service. Oh, there's a session tomorrow at 9 o'clock. Can you make it? I didn't want to be beeped like that. I didn't want to be, like a puppet on a string being taken everywhere. I wanted to have some independence. And now all of us are like that. Everyone's got their phone in their pocket and constantly being, interrupted. Your thoughts are interrupted, your energy, I used to practice 12 hours a day, no problem. I mean, who has the time to do that now? Now there's so much going on. So it's changed. It's changed. And I can't say it's better or worse, because, sometimes you sound real old when you say, oh, the old days were better. They were just better for what we were looking for. Young people are living in a different life right now. And I enjoy teaching young people because they teach me a lot about what's going on currently too. And I want to learn the present reality as much as live in the past, because the past is great, but it is gone, No,
it's true. I was going to mention, there was a time when I didn't hear here in Chile, it's less likely to be informed. Lyle Mays, when he left the Metheny Group, nobody knew what was going on. He made a couple of records or maybe more. And I had the chance to hear some live files, but I don't know, what's your impression of having worked with him? It was so shocking, really, when we got to know he got passed. So everybody went like, life is like that. You've mentioned a couple of times when you're not any longer here. Everybody thinks about that every now and then. But when a musician that, brings you so much joy and everything, what's your own impression of having worked with Lyle? That's what I would like to ask you.
Well, I mean, Lyle was like the greatest guy. I mean, he was like just a good soul, he really was. But he was so brilliant. I mean, when I say the word genius, because everyone's a genius nowadays. No, he was a genius. I mean, it didn't matter. I mean, he could have been an architect. He taught himself chess and beat like a state chess master. He was just like, he'd take a Rubik's cube and he'd solve it like in less than a minute. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And his ears, and he'd hear something and be able to write out anything, like 6 parts. I mean, it was just like frightening. And he was I can't believe he's gone, but I'm so lucky again to have played with him and to share it. Because if you listen to stuff, he and I played really well together. There's that one thing from Luna Park. I think it's from 86 or something, 85, 86. The concert. It's not officially released. It's on YouTube. And the way I hear us playing together, we were bouncing off of stuff, playing Straight on Red and some of those tunes, we were sharing spirits, it was fantastic. And so it's so sad because I was always hoping in some ways that particular group would do maybe even a summer tour, me, Lyle, Steve, Pat, and Pedro, and maybe Armando too, but that's never going to happen. It's just like the Beatles are never going to be together again, and it's such a definitive ending to something that was so special.
Yeah, it's really hard. It's really hard to take it sometimes. Now, I was going to also ask you about the Masters of Resonance documentary. That's the name, right?
Yeah.
The Masters, yeah. I was amazed because I saw a poster, and it's like this great man that also left, Neil Peart. What a genius too. Yeah. Did you ever any connection with him? Did you ever speak to him or met him?
No, I never really met him. I mean, I'm going to be in trouble for this, but I was never a big Rush fan.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, I loved a lot of prog rock stuff. I loved Yes, Genesis. Rush, it just, I don't know. It just didn't touch me, which doesn't mean that I'm wrong or I'm right or they were good or they weren't good. It has nothing to do with that. It just has to do with, to me, it's like just sometimes music, because we only have so much time, so I was interested in music that either I was interested in to learn or that music that touched me. And so there's certain great bands that just, I listen to them and that's cool, but I'd rather listen to something else. And even drumming style wise, he played, he was a great technician and stuff, but it's just funny how certain people get so famous like that. He was talented. I mean, he wrote the lyrics for that band and everything, but we are who we listen to, just like you are what you eat kind of thing. So like even if we're looking at rock drummers, John Bonham was great, but John Bonham was not my favorite rock drummer. I was more into like Keith Moon and Ginger Baker and Mitch Mitchell's at that time, why? I don't know, I mean, I liked Led Zeppelin, of course, I mean, but there's certain things that, I just did a thing yesterday, a drum chat from England, and I was turning people on to some people drummers that aren't famous that made a big impact in my life, and just saying like, the reason I am who I am is what I listen to and what I, decide to read and research and all that. And so, Rush is like one of the biggest bands, and I guess deservedly so. But for me, that wasn't a major influence.
Okay. Now, I before I forget, I have to congratulate you, of course, about those 6 Grammys. How many are they behind you? Yeah. Two tiny ones. Why is that? And the rest are bigger.
Well, there's actually 3 different sizes. I don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Can you see this? What I'm circling? You can't see what I'm circling.
No, you can see.
No.
You can?
No,
I cannot.
I see 4 of them are similar. Okay.
Yeah. So the 2 on each end are those are the newest ones. Those are a bigger size. Then there's three small ones. There's two small, like the left one and the middle one are like the early ones, like First Circle and that. And then the smaller one on the right is it's a little bit bigger, you know. So I would think, I'm trying to remember, I think in order, these would be like, you know, Imaginary Day and We Live Here and Road to You. And then this order, I think, would be First Circle, Still Life, and then Letter from Home.
And what about the bass? Is that sort of bass you have there?
What bass?
It looks like a vase, like next to the gramophone.
Oh, the vase?
Yeah.
Oh, that's just an award. It was called, I won like a Drummy Award from Drum Magazine for Best Fusion Drummer, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, my question was about the Grammys, and I was going to ask you if the expression in English is have they paid back? Is that the right expression in time? The Grammy Awards, having been awarded with so many Grammys, how meaningful have they become in your, you know, developing your, you know, maybe you're not very concerned about fame, but what do they mean in your career, apart from the physical object?
Sure. I mean, a couple things. For one thing, I mean, you know, you make a recording just to make music. You don't think of awards. But when they win an award, it's obviously a great feeling. You know, it's like icing on the cake. You know, you made the cake because you wanted to make a cake, but then it's the stuff on top that even helps it taste better. But what it's really done, it opens doors for you. You know, okay. So in other words, like if they say, you know, hi, I'm Paul Wertico, you know, oh, great. Yeah. And, you know, I've won 7 Grammys. What? You won, you know, people are like, what? You know, so it opens doors, which is a very positive thing to do. And plus I'm on, you know, I've been on the board of governors now of the Grammys stuff, you know, so it's opened up a lot of people in the industry that I've met through getting the Grammys too. So, you know, it's been great. And just the fact that like you're on a Grammy record, it's just like, you know, it's like they can't take that away. It's something you can be really proud of, you know, to the end of your life. And it's for good music. You know, it's not like you win a Grammy and you're going, oh God, this was a terrible record. I wish, you know, how could we win a Grammy? I mean, all the records were great and I'm proud of them.
Now, what about this? I was going to ask you, Paul, about this Vertico cane gray set formation. It seems to suit you quite well, huh?
Yeah.
You have several records, so I suppose that you feel comfortable. Obviously, otherwise you wouldn't be playing with them, recording with them.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you go to my website, you can see you know, there's a lot of DVDs of that too, and it's funny because how that happened. Again, just trusting life. Because this guy, Dave Kane, I didn't know him. He lives in Springfield, Illinois. And he called me one time, just, you know, he just wanted to play with me. And I said, sure. So I took the train down to Springfield, Illinois, and we did a concert that he happened to film and record with musicians I never met. And it was a thing called Feast for the Senses. So it was a concert that also had like really great chef, like, you know, so it's like food first. It was like, you know, like an artistic event. And then after Dave and I played, we were like good friends. And he was saying, who else would you want to play with? And I said, well, this guy, Larry Gray, who I've been with, you know, played with since 76, as long as my wife. And so we played the same place, the Hoogland Center for the Arts in Springfield, and we taped it again. And so Dave is like this great filmmaker too. He does a lot of films for the state of Illinois. So we kept everything basically. We put it together and then we won an award. So this is the first time the three of us had ever played together. It's 100% improvised. And we won the Independent Music Award that year for Best Live Performance.
Wow.
You know?
Amazing. Man.
Amazing. Yeah.
That's
and so ever since then too, you know, every time we play, it's so much fun. We really like each other. I mean, I talk to Dave every day about stuff. because he lives about 5 hours away, and Barb, my wife, is so funny. She goes, "Are you talking to your girlfriend again?" Because when we talk, I mean, Dave and I can spend a half hour just talking about music and life, and it's just like you meet people like that, and it's just a joy to be around something like that. It's great.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Christian. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say that music lends itself for long hours of talking and meeting great people, doesn't it?
Absolutely, man.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
If I can take you, Paul, back to as an example from Stewart Copeland and the Police. I remember that Stewart Copeland used to argue a lot with Sting because he didn't want to pay the backbeat. Stewart Copeland want to say, I want to do Sting, I want to do the Police music, but I want to do my own style. I want to do my own thing, and he refused to play the backbeat. What is Paul Vertico style? If I could ask you that.
Well, I mean, again, it just depends on the music, but the style is, I wrote that book called Turn the Beat Around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's about playing the backbeat on beats 1 and 3. It's about turning it backwards.
Instead of 2/4, right? Yeah,
it's on 1 and 3. And I came up with the term front beat instead of backbeat.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's a very underutilized thing. I mean, there's millions and millions of songs and they always have backbeats. And there's a reason for it, but there's also, when you play it the other way, it changes the whole feel of everything. And also, even with my students, when we work on that book, when they go back to playing normally, their beat is better just because of concentrating on something in a different way. So that's the only book in the world ever written about that. Think about that, all the thousands and thousands of drum books, and no one's ever written about reversing the backbeat. How is that possible? Just like, how is it possible all those songs, every song has a backbeat? I remember when the book came out, my wife and I were in a Mexican restaurant nearby, and they were just playing, music outside, just music, and every song was backbeat, and we're going like, wow, why? What people? There's so much people that are afraid to do anything different, And there are, like Sunshine Your Love by Ginger Baker, by Cream, that's backwards, he plays on the front beat. And, Bell Bottom Blues by Derek and the Dominoes, Jim Gordon does that. There's a number of songs. Forgotten Roads by the band If, which was great. A great band. If you don't know that band, If. They were a jazz rock band. Fantastic. Yeah. So Dennis Elliott on the tune Forgotten Roads plays it backwards. Sounds fantastic. But I could name probably on 2 hands all the songs that that are popular that have that. And then there's Afro beats by Tony Allen. He reversed it. And then, there's reggae beats. There's certain ethnic beats, some Jewish music and stuff where it's turned around. But in general, everybody plays the backbeat all the time. And it's like habit, I guess. So I'm hoping, the reason I wrote the book was hopefully maybe people will start playing new ways of, because it changes the phrasing. So like if I do a Led Zeppelin, right? If I turn it around, that's more tribal almost sounding. Right. And that sounds great. Why not play like that? Change the phrasing.
I know you are a very, prolific musician, and when you are not touring or working on the new album or, talking to your buddies, and what do you do for fun? What Paul Vertico does for fun? Outside music, forget the music.
Well, I'm really into trains, railroads.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've driven trains. I've got a model railroading train layout. I've always been in trains. I mean, that's why Last Train Home was a piece of cake for me. So books, and so I'll sit and do a lot of like things about railroads and travel. Really interested in that.
Yeah. Plus, you like to cook. You mentioned that.
I love to cook. Oh, yeah. I mean,
your wife must love you.
She does. Yeah. I mean, and because again, like she's a great cook, but she's a recipe cook.
Right.
I'm not. I just invent things. I put stuff together, and 9 out of 10 times it's going to be different and good.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Paul, I don't know. You've been with us for like an hour and 12 minutes now. Let me know how much.
No,
you
it's only
have.
it's been fine, man. I mean, my wife's visiting her mother right now, so I've got time right now if you want to keep
Okay.
going.
And a difficult question to ask because, and I always ask the interviewers, well, you have the opportunity to play with the best people, in the world in terms of, drummers and, bass player, and so on and so forth. Is anyone or more than one in particular that, you wish to have the opportunity to do a gig with?
No,
that you can no.
I don't have a bucket list
No.
for who I want to play with.
Yeah.
I just don't. I mean,
you're lucky though that you have played with the best people.
Yeah, I mean, it's really sad. Like Larry Coryell, I mean, when he died, I mean, because we were supposed to do gigs together again. I mean, it's sad when people you love playing with are gone. But people have asked me that a lot. Like, who are you dying to play with? And I'd love to play with a lot of different musicians, but it's not like I'm going to go to my grave and go, oh, if I only played with this person. No,
Yeah. Okay, Paul.
Yeah.
How difficult is it for you to be a recording, touring artist? Maybe not these days touring, but being a family man. A family man versus being an artist. You use lots of hours in a day to practice, to play, whatever, workshops, you name them. What can you tell us about that?
Well, that's one reason I wanted to leave too. I mean, touring, like, with Pat was great, but once my daughter was born, I did not want to be one of those musicians that never saw their family. So I never missed a birthday of hers, luckily. I never missed any really like first big event. I was there for her birth. I mean, I stayed home. I trained another drummer to replace me on a tour.
Oh,
you know that?
Oh,
yeah. So the We Live Here tour, the Live in Japan one. Okay. Yeah. So I found out, Barb was pregnant like early in 1995. And I told Pat, and so that Barb was going to be expecting, like sometime in, around like October. And he didn't want to cancel this Asian tour. So I said, no, I'm not going to go because I want to be there for my daughter's birth. And so I trained another drummer who ended up playing, I think he played a gig in Korea or something. I only missed like one gig. But so the day that we decided that Barb was going to give birth, it's funny because the night before that we bought popsicles and everything to take to the hospital. And then that morning I dropped her off at this hospital, and I had 2 recording sessions that day. And they were like 5 minutes away. They were jingles. So I dropped her off and I said, I'll come back after, between jingles. So I went and played the first jingle. And then I told the producer, I said, you might want to have another drummer on hand because I'm, just in case I can't make the second one, which is what happened. Because once I got to the hospital, I was with her, and there was about, about maybe 2 or 3 hour period between jingles. All of a sudden she started, feeling it. So I was there for the birth of my daughter, and I wouldn't have missed that for anything. And then after she was born, I stayed home for a couple days. In fact, I mean, the first music she ever heard, you can see the stereo right there. The first thing, she was crying, and in the middle of the night, I played her John Coltrane's ballads. That was the first record my daughter ever heard.
Oh.
And the second record was Earwax Control. So that's really crazy. But then I flew to Japan, and literally like basically almost got off the plane and did 2 concerts that turned out to be that We Live Here Live in Japan thing. And that, so imagine being jet lagged and playing, and like 2 concerts that are being filmed for radio, television, and a record. And one of the engineers that was on there was on the flight, and I went to talk to him between shows. And he was like, how are you doing this, man? You know, how are you staying awake, you know? Yeah. So to me, you know, that was really, really important. And a lot of times, you know, Barb and Talia would fly out and be on tour with us for at least, you know, maybe a few days or a week in Europe and stuff. So that was really great. And like Pat and Lyle, they were really nice to my family, you know, I mean, because, you know, they already knew Barb, of course, but I mean, it was, you know, Talia was really, I mean, I don't know if on Facebook, if you saw what I posted after Lyle died, there's a picture of us in the studio with my daughter at the piano and Lyle playing. Oh, yeah, you know,
I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, you know, that's like a memory of Lyle that, you know, is so beautiful, because that's what he was like. You know, people don't know he was like that he was this kind, cool person, because a lot of times, you know, people would talk to him after the show and, you know, he's very intense and brilliant. So, you know, he might just be like, okay, you know, just short, you know, because he was somewhere else. So sometimes people are, oh, he was not very friendly. Well, no, he was friendly. He just, you know, he was Lyle, you know, he was on another plane than most people are on, you know, amazing.
Well, before my last question, Paul,
sure.
I'd like to share one more picture with you, if I can. Now that we're talking about him, I also thought he was such a serious guy. Back in 1996, when I went to the Estadio Victor Jara, it's called now, I thought, oh, I don't know if this guy is going to want to talk to me. I wanted to get his autograph. You know, I'm a music fan. Yeah. But he was so simple and so friendly, as you say. So it was really amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, and funny. Really, he had a great sense of humor, you know.
Yeah. Now, I was going to ask you, Paul, about the Road to You tour. And I remember that when I interviewed Pat, I said to him, you know, I think this album is not a live album. And he was surprised to see, you know, you're the first one to tell me that, because everybody thinks that that's really a live video. The Road to You, I think it's in Italy, and with Pedro Aznar.
Yeah, it was live.
But he said, no, it's really like we mix we put some applause in the mix, but I think he meant that not the whole video was live. What do you know?
If I remember, I mean, they might have fixed a few things, but it was live, you know. But the thing is, you know, the arrangements are the same as on the record, almost. You know what I mean? That's why some people don't think it's live, because that's what we were doing, was playing live versions of what the recordings were. You know, where if it was a jazz group, you would just, you know, you would play totally different all the time. So. But like I'm saying, this was more about serving the music and making the compositions successful, and it was about the audience coming to hear what they loved on the record. You know, that's why jazz, or especially 100% improvised music's hard for a lot of people to get close to, because it just happens once and then it's gone. You know, it's just like, that's why, you know, even rock or country western music, you can sing along with it because everybody knows it already, you know. And so that period of the band with me, those were compositions, and the performances were familiar to, and the sound. So even to do that live, we had to have sequencers, you know. Otherwise, you'd have to hire a symphony orchestra for one tune on one song, you know.
Okay. I lied. This is my last question. Do you have any story behind the Last Train Home? Because I really, you know, I get emotional with that song all the time, and there must be something about it. Who came up with the idea?
Well, I think Pat came up with the idea. I remember just playing, you know, the brush beat or whatever with him. You know, it was funny because the song title, I wanted to actually call it Broken Promise, because to me, you know, being into trains, I saw like a train coming, because as much as I love trains destroyed Native Indians. You know, they invaded their land, killed all the buffalo. And so to me, Broken Promise, it's because the song had a thing like about like a positive thing, but sort of sad, melancholy feeling to it. But you know, we went with Last Train Home. But I have to play that live a lot of times. I mean, even there was a band in town here called Deacon Blues. It's a Steely Dan kind of tribute band. So sometimes I'll play with that band because, you know, everyone's great in it. The bass player is Miles Davis's last bass, or not last bass player, but he played with Miles, Richie Patterson. He's with Dave Sanborn now. And so the guitar player who's the leader wants to play Last Train Home because he likes to play 2 tunes of Metheny, just since I'm the guest in the band. So to play that, you know, people are going to always looking at me, is this guy going to be able to play this whole thing and not fall apart, you know? Because to play 5 minutes of, you know, without leaving out one note, that's physically, you know, it can be challenging, I guess, for some people. And so, you know, that would be, I guess, my story about that.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing the memories, your time. I really appreciate this opportunity. Thanks, Claudio, because he's been inviting me to all these conversations that are not interviews as such. I think that music always touches you in so special manners that, you know, it can take you to different times in your life. So that's what you've done. And thank you for that. Really, I appreciate it. Yeah, and you deserve all those little things you have behind you, really.
Absolutely. And the last question from me, Paul. You have played in so many theaters, so many cities all over the world, with path or without path, before and after. Is any part A of the question, any particular city that you like going all over the world, or any particular theater that you wish you could play, you know, every weekend or so, if you could, or no? Or
well, no, I mean, you know, there's not one particular, I don't look at life like that. I've had people ask me that before, who's your favorite drummer? Don't have one, you know what? And so even what my favorite countries are, you know, to play, there's a lot of them, you know. I like the ones, I mean, you know, playing in South America is usually great. There's, you know, playing, you know, in Italy is great, Spain, you know, there's many countries, they're all great. And I like them all. They're all very different. And as far as the venues, you know, I like clubs sometimes, because, you know, when you play a club, you get to meet the people, you know, like between sets, you get to hang out, go to the bar and talk with people. Sometimes concerts are great because you make more money and, you know, there's an exciting presence of a concert, but sometimes, you know, they throw the audience out afterwards, you know, and then you're going like, where is everybody? So, you know, but both of them are different, and both of them have their advantages and disadvantages too, you know. Trying to make a living playing clubs is very difficult because, you know, so they're, like I said, they're both fine. And, you know, for me, I just like audiences that really are appreciative of the music, you know. They're, you know, the ones that are just there to party, you know, as if the band is just a reason to get together to have a party. That's a different kind of audience. That's more of an audience that, you know, they're fun, they're exciting, but they're really not, you know, they're not listening to you as an artist necessarily. They're just there to kind of go to an event. I like audiences that are really there, not to just study and go like, oh, that guy missed that note, or no, you know, but people that really appreciate all the work and the love that goes into creating the music that we play.
Yeah, that was great. As I say, as Christian just mentioned, thank you very much, Paul. You are a very decent individual. You know, I have met a lot of good people here in the United States as a foreigner when I'm a U.S. citizen, but and then a lot of bad people, and then you are one of the decent ones, man. So you can, you know, you one day you're gonna be 90, whatever. You want to look back at your life, and you can say, well, the Grammys are there. Look at my record, my wife, my kids, grandkids, whatever. And you did well in this world. And now that we have, you know, a new president, we will make this country a better country. And
well, that's what I'm saying. If we can get that Barb song, you know,
I will try.
That would be amazing.
Do my best, man. I will.
Wow.
I will call some people this week, and I will make it happen. Let me play the part.
Okay, thanks, Claudio.
Thank you very much, Paul. Again, thank you, Christian, and we'll be in touch very soon. And good luck to you.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Okay, ciao.
Bye.
Thank you.